Well, Josh, we're finally here. We got our donuts, we got our coffee, and we're gonna try and solve this mystery.
Yes, we're ready for an investigation.
Yes, yes.
Oh, that's nice.
3 days old.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
good.
Still hot.
Burning right in there. That's great.
I saw them in a room. Dirty, bearded men in a room.
We're gonna do it. We're gonna talk about Twin Peaks.
We've waited long enough. We've thought about it. We've watched it a few times. I think we were discussing we've maybe done, we're going to say approximately 3.5 times each.
Yes, altogether for season 3.
Bits and pieces.
Yeah. It's one of those things where it just felt overwhelming to try and condense into a concise video with some sort of structure to it.
Boy, oh boy.
But also not ruin it for people.
That's also true.
So,
really give people time to see it.
Yeah, and now I think people have. This whole thing's going to be spoilers. We're going to talk about it as if you've seen it.
There's no reason to do it any other way.
Yeah. And first thing, right off the bat, I want to mention this because there's already been 500 comments about it. Yes, we're aware of the 4-hour, 5-hour, everything about Twin Peaks, definitely, concretely explained video. No interest in it.
No, I don't need it explained.
Well, that's the thing, is I watched a little bit of it just to get a feel for it, because I'm not going to shit on it if I haven't watched any of it.
Fair.
And if it'd be one thing if it's just, here's my theory about what the show is about. Because it's about the whole show, not just season 3.
Right, the whole, yeah.
And it's like, okay, that's your theory. You have a thesis. You're finding ways to connect everything. That's fine. But it's presented in such a smug and reductive way where it's like, this is definitely what it all means.
Oh, God, no.
And here's some out-of-context quotes from David Lynch that are basically unrelated that I'm connecting to it. And the central thesis being that the entire series is a meta-narrative about violence on TV. Which I think that's a part of it.
That's absolutely
There's definitely a meta aspect to it, but it's like connecting everything to that robs the show of so many things that make it wonderful, including its entire emotional core.
Yeah.
So I watched a little bit of it. I couldn't take it anymore.
Okay.
We're not here to give you answers. I don't know. I looked at the comments, and it's like, so many people are like, thank you, now I know what it all means, and I don't have to think anymore.
Oh, no.
It's just so antithetical to everything I love dearly about David Lynch's work, not just Twin Peaks.
Yeah, but was a big part of the initial experience of watching it. When we did, because we were watching it together, a group of us, and it was number one, it was nice to be taken back to kind of that weekly TV structure that we grew up with, you know. I mean, maybe it's nostalgia, I guess, whatever, but I wouldn't have necessarily wanted to watch the whole thing in a row because we needed time to process and think about it and discuss it, and then, you know, I'd go talk with other people that had watched it, you know, and it was, they used to call it water cooler TV, you know.
If any show benefits from that format, that old school TV format, it's this one.
Yeah.
Because that was, you, me, a couple other friends, every week we'd get together and watch it. Afterwards, we discuss it and try and make some sort of sense out of it.
Yeah, and it'd just be like, just the excitement, just like, what do you think that was? Oh man, I think, well, maybe it was this. Like, well, I don't know if it was that, you know, and just being able to really like dig into it.
Yeah.
Like,
Cooper's definitely coming back next week. He's drinking the coffee. That's going to trigger it,
that's
right?
totally going to be it.
Cut to 16 episodes later.
God, was it the next episode where the only shot of Dougie was just him getting hit in the face by the baseball?
That's another thing, is it's weird to talk about it as episodes, because I mean it is, but it feels like an 18-hour movie. It feels like a natural extension of what David Lynch was starting to do with like Inland Empire,
right?
Where it's just getting long and out of control.
Yeah, and it's episodic connected. Like, I mean, I would consider Inland Empire is somewhat episodic, where it's like, well, now she's here, and now she's here, and now she's here.
Yeah, well, that's by virtue of the fact that he made it. It wasn't intended to be a feature. He was just kind of experimenting with his cheap, crappy digital camera, and that's kind of what makes him so fascinating, is having all these random ideas and then finding ways to sort of connect them all.
And I don't necessarily know how much of that is him and how much of that is Mark Frost. You can't say. But it seems to have helped having Mark Frost around.
Oh yeah, and that's we should recap the story. because there is a story.
Yep.
I feel like we mentioned this whenever we talk about David Lynch. Other people that don't like him, just it's all just weird nonsense. And
oh no, there's a definite story, and there's just a lot of flavor around it.
There's always a core story that you can connect with, and then everything else kind of branches off from that.
I love ideas. I like a story that's got some concrete, structure, but also holds abstractions. Life is filled with abstractions, and the way we make heads or tails of it is through intuition. And so people get used to film that pretty much explains itself 100%, and they kind of turn off that beautiful thing of intuition when they're looking at a film that has some abstractions. These pictures and sounds flowing along together in time in a sequence, making a thing that can only really be said in cinema.
It's much broader than this, but the basic story is 25 years after the events of season 2. At the end of that season, of course, Cooper has been replaced by Bob, or as we learn in this, not really Bob, but the same sort of evil spirit that Bob represents.
It becomes a question of what Bob is.
Not specifically Bob. Yeah,
to get into that.
We can get into that, but evil Cooper has now been out in our world, or the world of Twin Peaks, which might be different than our world, which we'll get into when we talk about meta stuff.
There's that too.
But he's been out just causing trouble for 25 years.
25 years of international intrigue and just bad stuff all around the world.
He's a real son of a bitch.
Oh man.
But now, because these are the rules of the other place, I guess, 25 years go by, you have to go back, and the real Cooper gets to come back to his world. You're going to be replaced. But evil Cooper's thought ahead.
He's got a plan, and that plan's name is Dougie.
He created what we learn is called a tulpa.
What's happening to me?
Which is a direct copy of yourself. So
Direct?
I mean, as far as physical appearance.
As far as physical appearance, yeah.
So he's made a tulpa of himself so that when real Cooper tries to come back in the world, he will replace Dougie and not evil Cooper, and evil Cooper can continue to be in our world, or the Twin Peaks world, and continue to wreak havoc.
Indefinitely.
And that's the basic story.
What the hell?
It's extremely basic.
And then you throw on top of that, the actual town of Twin Peaks, and how the lack of any sort of bright, positive Cooper-type character has kind of corrupted things. There's kind of like this rot that's been forming under the surface. It's a much darker place than we're used to. And it ends up being a battle of light versus dark, good versus evil. It's David Lynch's The Stand, the Stephen King story, The Stand.
Gosh, I hadn't even thought of that till now, but it really good. Yeah, that works.
We saw this on that little slip of paper we took out of Major Briggs's tube. What is this?
You don't ever want to know about that.
The first time you watch it, you're like, "What?" You don't know what's happening, and you're just trying to follow it as best you can. On rewatch, it all makes so much more sense.
Oh, yes.
And the story is so much more clear, and it's all set up right from that opening scene with Cooper and the fireman. Everything that pays off in the last 2 episodes is set up in that scene.
Listen to the sounds. Is this in Arasna? Remember 430.
Almost exactly 430 miles.
Richard and Linda.
Richard. Linda.
But yeah, so it's set up right there, and then off you go.
We see some old characters, we see some new characters. We'll get into those, and there's all sorts of different storylines that, especially when it first starts out, everything feels so disconnected from each other. It's very, almost to the point where you're like, is this intentional, or is this kind of just not working? Because it's so stark. There's no music for the first 3 or 4 episodes. There's some ambience here and there, but it's very off-putting right off the bat.
Yeah, and I think that ends up adding to the thrill of when everything starts to be drawn together because it is that far splayed out where it's just like, here's New York, here's South Dakota, here's Vegas.
Huh? Are we ever going to get to Twin Peaks?
Yeah, nothing's going on there right now. That's okay.
You're not important yet.
We'll get there.
But it really takes its time, which I think was probably a big turnoff to some people.
Oh man! And again, on rewatching it, it's so deliberate. It was really so much more clear on the second time. Just like when you're not waiting every second for Dougie to turn into proper Cooper, then you could really enjoy it.
Yeah,
and you have that anticipation, removed. You don't have to worry about it. So then you get to really focus on what the story is doing a lot more, and it was so much funnier the second time.
Funnier and darker.
Yeah.
It's possibly the darkest thing David Lynch has ever done. I think I said this when we talked about Fire Walk with Me, but it's like, because that was before the new season came out. And it's like, don't expect this. This isn't going to be Twin Peaks Season 3 in the conventional sense of, here's all the characters you love, and here's the continuation of that story. And it's like, it's not going to be that. This is not quirky Twin Peaks anymore. This is a dark, dark place because there's no light in this world. Cooper kind of represents that positive light, and he's been absent for 25 years, and everything's just turned to shit.
The fuck kind of neighborhood is this?
People are under a lot of stress, Bradley.
There's all the stuff like at the Roadhouse we keep getting throughout the series, these little vignettes that don't really connect any of the main storylines.
No.
But thematically they connect, and just showing how kind of dark this world has turned.
Well, I mean,
and that's some of my favorite stuff on the show.
Yeah, well, first off, the Roadhouse is a hipster bar now.
Apparently.
That's dark. Oh, there's all these fucking fashion bands. We're just going to put on Sharp Dressed Man and everybody's going to dance. Actually, that's pretty awesome. I want to say that.
That MC guy. When
he's great.
He's dancing to Sharp Dressed Man. But yeah, all those scenes too, as far as, we kind of mentioned, it's more of like a 18-hour movie than it is a traditional TV show.
Yeah.
As far as, because it doesn't have that, it's like, here's a scene, here's another. It doesn't have that like structure episode to episode.
No.
So those little scenes at the end of each episode with the Roadhouse and a band performing.
It's kind of a palate cleanser.
Yeah, it's a nice way to like, okay, we're winding down now. And especially after, because I was, optimistic but hesitant when it was returning. And so by the time you get to the end of that, it's the first 2 episodes they aired as one long thing.
Yeah.
And you get to the end of that episode and we're in the Roadhouse and there's that chromatic song playing. And it's like, okay, it was like being wrapped in a warm blanket where it's like, okay, this whole thing's going to be all right.
Yeah, take a rest.
He's not going to fuck this up. Which is something to point out, that idea of like someone returning to an old franchise or an old property and just not working the same way. I mean, this doesn't work the same way, but that's by design. It works its own way.
It feels a lot more informed by David Lynch's film work necessarily than like anything TV. Even like the first couple seasons of Twin Peaks, honestly.
Oh yeah.
Another thing that kind of struck me as more of a film thing as opposed to a TV thing, at least in Twin Peaks, the first 2 seasons were all score, as far as I remember. But this, you get at the end of every episode, you get a song, like a modern band doing a song. You get very popular songs. The great use of Take 5 during the coffee scene.
Oh yeah.
It's like, that's nothing that I'm used to from David Lynch, so that was really something.
Yeah, I mean, he's used, I think of like Lost Highway, which that movie kind of had one of those soundtracks, like The Crow, where it's like the soundtrack's more popular than the movie.
Yeah.
And that had like, who's on that? It's like Marilyn Manson and all these like big names.
Yeah, but then like Roy Orbison.
Yeah, that's true. You have weird stuff in there too.
Or something, but yeah, like a combination of industrial metal and 50s classics.
Yeah, which I guess that contrast makes the soundtrack interesting.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, this definitely feels more informed by his movie stuff than it does the original series.
Sure, and also possibly him having spent a lot of time focusing on music. And definitely like a lot of those bands that show up at the end are on the same label he's on.
Okay.
Kind of are like, in that similar sort of scene that he stumbled into basically by inventing it, 25 years ago, 30 years ago.
All those little vignettes, and that's my favorite one. It's the Charlene Yee one, where it's just so, she's just sitting there and she's so like meek, and these just big biker guys just, I'm waiting for somebody. They just pick her up and put her on the floor, and she's so defeated she doesn't even try and stand up.
Yeah.
And then she's crawling, and that guttural scream.
Yeah, I like what you're saying there. The overall rot of the town, and but it's interesting too, because like you think about how what the Roadhouse was in the first couple of seasons. Like it was it was a rough place. There's the pink room back there, and bad stuff happens. Like, is that the green room now for the bands? You think? It's like time doesn't mean anything, but we do need to go on like 20. But you think about what that place sort of represents in Twin Peaks. And what it's supposed to be 25 years later, and it's all filled with the next generation. But there is still that undercurrent of not filth exactly, but grime or like danger.
Yeah, well, and it's leaked out into more of Twin Peaks too. I mean, there's some of this that almost feels like apocalyptic. Like I mentioned The Stand earlier. Like there's that part when Bobby and Shelley are in the diner with their daughter, and a gunshot goes through the window, and Bobby goes out to investigate.
Was a gun. He could have killed himself. He could have killed all of us.
His husband and wife, and they're arguing because there's a gun in the car. There's lots of stuff about guns in this.
Yes.
I think that's a big thing, is just like how overwhelming violence has become in this world.
It's really permeated.
And drugs,
so much more drugs too. Yeah.
Drugs are a big part of it. But yeah, that whole scene, like Bobby goes out there and the couple's just screaming at each other, and then the car behind him with that crazy lady, and it's like a zombie in the passenger seat, this kid of hers.
She's sick!
It's like
spewing up something.
And like Bobby doesn't even know what to make of any of this.
There are two great, in the whole series for me, there are two great audience surrogate moments. And that's one of them. Because we're feeling the same thing that Bobby is. It's just like, what the fuck is happening? What is happening in my town?
Yeah.
I'm supposed to be in charge. I'm supposed to know everything. And I can't deal with any of this.
Yeah.
Like, it's just too much. And the other one, of course, when Hawk has gotten everything out of the Laura Palmer archive, has it all up on the table in the break room. And Lucy panics because while she was pregnant, she sneaked a chocolate bunny out of the evidence and ate it, and she's so sad, and she's worried she's going to go to prison and everything. And Hawk finally just calms her down, and she's like, "It's not about the bunny."
Do chocolate bunnies have anything to do with your heritage?
No, it's not about the bunny. It's not about the bunny. Is it about the bunny?
Is it about the bunny? Which I swear to God should have been just a 30-second promo on Showtime for the show. Just Twin Peaks Season 3. Is it about the bunny?
No. It's not about the bunny.
And that's one of those scenes, like maybe the pacing of it is different than people would expect from if you're looking at it compared to the original show. But that's one of the, there is a lot of Twin Peaksy stuff in it. Like a scene like that reminds me so much of the original series.
Definitely.
Or even things like one of the last episodes when Cooper's in the hospital bed and every character, like Janie E's in there, his kids are in there, and then like the Mitchum brothers show up with their Las Vegas, not showgirls, but whatever they are, their waitresses and their whole outfits.
I mean, they're like showgirl-esque.
Whatever they are.
Like assistants.
Yeah. They're personal assistants that just always dress like that. But they're all just in this little hospital room, and it's like, this is so weird looking.
Yeah, just the chaos.
Yeah.
That Yeah, that did feel like something that could have almost like that Marx Brothers feeling.
Yeah.
That would pop up in the first couple seasons as well. It's hard for a show to balance that really well, and Twin Peaks is a good example of how well you can balance just some terrifying things with some completely ridiculous things.
Well, that's the whole thing, that balance of light and dark.
But then the other thing I wanted to connect there, that I can actually also connect to the break room, or, to having all the Laura Palmer evidence, is probably my favorite improved actor. It's Dana Ashbrook.
He's one of my favorite characters on this season.
It's so wonderful because, number one, he's completely changed. He's now on the good side of the law. He's an upstanding citizen. He's a cop. He's he was the bad boy of town. He was drug dealing, killing people.
He killed a guy.
He killed a guy. Bobby killed a guy.
Bobby killed a guy.
Rebelling against his parents, all that, and now he's upstanding member of town. He's been with the cops for a while.
He's also the only returning character to get, because this show is like the anti-nostalgia show.
Yeah.
Like when they introduce, or when they cut the scenes with characters from the original series, they're not given any sort of like fanfare. It's not like, look, here's Dr. Jacoby. The first time you see him is in this like wide shot of Dr. Jacoby walking out of his little trailer.
Yeah.
And it just cuts to the characters without any sort of like reminder. It's just like they still exist in this world.
Yep.
It's not a big deal.
Ben Horn's still in the fucking lodge. In his office where he's been for the last 25 years.
Exactly.
Doing the same shit. It's
so
fine.
the only character that there's an exception for with that is Bobby.
Bobby.
And I think it's because his character has taken such a turn from where he was on the original show.
He does so well in playing the little subtle things perfectly. It's back in that scene where he's talking with Shelley and their daughter, and you can tell he's got just that little flicker of like, maybe he could get back with Shelley and things would be great again. And then she runs off to make out with Balthazar Getty, and he just deflates.
Yeah.
Just like, oh, it's so good. So good. And he's got one of the most tough fucking beats to pull off. It could have been so bad when he wheels into that boardroom and sees the picture of Laura Palmer.
Man, brings back some memories.
It's so like perfectly done because that's like episode 3 or 4. Yeah. But up until that point, like we were talking about the music and how it's so stark.
Barely there at all.
And I mean, the show is called Twin Peaks: The Return, and it feels like it's kind of very slowly. I mean, you have Coop slowly returning. You have the balance of light and dark very slowly returning.
Yeah, you're on that same pace.
Yeah, and even like down to because that's the first time we get any of the like classic Twin Peaks music is when Bobby comes in and he sees that and it's like, oh, and he says he's like brought up some old feelings, and it's like. It's not baiting you with nostalgia. It's using these things you recognize to enhance the emotion of the scene.
Yeah, to
like
put you right there.
Yeah.
Of people that are returning, coming back, it was obviously there is a certain nostalgia to be like, oh, it's still Hawk and it's still Andy and it's still Lucy, but they
feel so natural in their parts though. Like they would still be working here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love kind of the division there. In the police station, where you got to go around and turn the corner to get to the modern part of the police station, where the assholes are. Well, there's just one asshole, but he kind of colors the whole thing.
Fucking Chad.
Fucking Chad.
She didn't used to be like this. You didn't know that their son committed suicide?
Yeah, I heard something about that. He couldn't take being a soldier.
Really fascinated by, how Shelley's relationships have changed. Major Amick did such a great job. Worried about like, oh, her daughter's Amanda Seyfried. Like, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, she's just got a couple scenes. It's okay. Not a big deal. She does fine. God, her husband, another fucking prick.
That slimy guy. He was in like Get Out. I feel like he's always that. He's in Antiviral. The Brandon Cronenberg movie.
Okay.
He's always that kind of guy.
He plays it well.
He's perfect in this. But those two, yeah, Amanda Seyfried and him are another kind of like just showing the darker underbelly that's kind of been bubbling up in Twin Peaks.
Yeah.
Come and sit by my side, little darling.
And then Harry Dean Stanton, I think we were pretty sure at the time that he didn't have any lines given to him. Just like, go be in the show. Do whatever you're going to do.
Be Harry Dean Stanton.
It's a fucking nightmare.
Well, this is the new Fat Trout trailer park.
Yes, it's moved.
Because logistically, I don't think he would be anywhere near Twin Peaks in the original in Fire Walk With Me, right?
No.
So
but he's come back.
For some reason, he's moved near Twin Peaks to open up a new trailer park.
I think he's in the extended like Mark Frost lore. He's from there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Because like there's a thing in the pre-show book where there are 3 kids that get abducted by aliens, and one of which is Carl, and one of which is the log lady.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I want to talk about that a little more here and there, but again, it's Mark Frost's Twin Peaks, not David Lynch's Twin Peaks.
Right.
So you take all that
I've
with
heard
an extra.
there, because he did a book that came out before the new season, and then he did a book afterwards.
Which
Is
I
that
just
right?
read.
Okay.
So we can talk about that when
I haven't
it comes
read
up.
any of those. I've heard there's some inconsistencies between characters and stuff from his stuff and the season.
Yeah, and you basically you take those as an interesting alternate theory, like not quite fan fiction, like insider fan fiction, basically.
Okay.
I would say. It's like, it's what he wants to write. It's fine. It's not exactly, part of the story, but it's authorized.
Okay.
It's 7 o'clock. Do you know where your freedom is?
Jacoby is so wonderful.
He's lost it.
He's and in such a great way. That's the thing. Like some of the characters that have just gone completely nuts. I love it. It's so engaging. We're like, he's got a very specific plan, and it seems to work. It works on Nadine anyway.
He's introduced because there's some characters like Audrey Horne doesn't show up till over halfway through the season.
And we were waiting.
We're like, where's Audrey? She's got to show up, right?
She did.
And she did. We'll get into that.
Or did she?
But But Dr. Jacoby shows up pretty early, where it's almost like he's going to be a major part of the show. And he's not. He's kind of on the sidelines. And like I said, the first time you see him is just like this massive wide shot, and then we cut to him like spray painting shovels, and you're like, what is this?
He's just very methodically. That's a lot.
He's rigged up this whole contraption using like an old like swing set and like bike tires. That's the whole system that moves the that moves the
shovels.
The shovels.
This is your shiny gold shovel. 2 coats, guaranteed. Shovel your way out of the shit and into the truth.
It sets off the series of events that needs to happen. Where like if he wasn't there, Nadine wouldn't self-actualize all of a sudden after all these years. Yeah. Even though her drape store seems to be doing quite well.
Yeah.
But so she's able to go and set Big Ed free so he can be with Norma.
But I've been a selfish bitch to you all these years. And you've been a saint.
What? And so that's basically like the whole reason that's there.
Yeah.
It's to make this thing happen at the end. Other than that, it's just a fun little thing for an actor to do.
And come on, who doesn't want to shovel themselves out of the shit?
But I did feel like a lot of that was kind of like a lot of the cut scenes from Fire Walk With Me that we finally got.
I wanted a 2x4 inch.
That's what those scenes kind of feel like to me, although they do eventually point to something.
Yeah, but that's the stuff that you got to cut that out of a feature film when you're doing 18 hours of unfiltered, uncut David Lynch.
Yeah,
you got the time. Throw those scenes in there.
The whole scene, like whole first scene with Ben and Jerry Horn.
Oh yeah,
it's just that's totally what that is to me. It's just. Jerry's been growing the good stuff, and he is on it.
Yeah.
Whoo boy.
Is that Mother's hat?
Well, Jerry's storyline is funny. That's one of those like really, really long, drawn out. What ends up being a joke because
the whole way
he spends the entire series lost in the woods.
I don't know where I am. Go away.
And then towards the very end, he accidentally stumbles onto the plot of the show.
Yeah.
When he runs into to Evil Cooper.
Which he wanders all the way to what, like North Dakota? Or
something like that.
From Montana?
But we just occasionally just cut to him in the woods. He's arguing with his foot, whatever. And you're like, you're thinking, like, this isn't going to connect to anything. And then he wanders right into the plot.
Whoops.
It's a way of like catching up with the characters from the original show that feels so like natural and organic.
Yes.
Without it, it's not like we got to put this character in. Like Donna doesn't show up.
No, and why would she?
Why would she?
Because they couldn't get Moira Kelly. I don't know. I know they couldn't get Lara Flynn Boyle.
You don't want to get Lara Flynn Boyle. But yeah, like, it's not like we got to put these characters in there because people expect them. It's David Lynch putting them in there because he loves these actors, but he loves these characters too, and just wants to see what they're doing these days.
Yeah, and luckily, that's not the case now. But a lot of people were still around at the time that could participate. Although Michael Hunkeen decided he didn't want to, but then he got Robert Forster, who is perfect.
Who's great.
I mean,
in everything.
Yeah, he's Robert Forster, so he walks in and owns that role so perfectly. I couldn't imagine anybody doing a better job during the Wally Brando scene than Robert Forster.
My shadow is always with me. Sometimes ahead, sometimes behind, except on cloudy days or at night.
Yes. Well,
it's exactly what you need to set that off.
He's just so patient.
Yep.
As Michael Cera just keeps babbling.
And he didn't even want to talk to him. He wanted to talk to Harry.
Yeah. But that's something too with having Robert Forster. I mean, this is like almost every actor that David Lynch has ever worked with shows up in this. A lot of them do, like Balthazar Getty, who's in Lost Highway.
Yeah.
And Robert Forster, I kind of forgot, he's in Mulholland Drive. It's briefly, he's a cop in it.
Oh, geez.
Him and something Briscoe, I can't remember the actor's name, but they're cops in Mulholland Drive. They both show up in this. But pointing out that, we don't have Harry on this season. For whatever reason, that actor didn't want to come back. And it's like, they could have just written anything, like, oh, he retired or he moved to another town. They very pointedly, and this ties in with you talking about some of these actors that have died, they make a point of saying that he's sick.
And Harry, do me a favor. Beat this thing.
And I feel like that's another reoccurring thing on this season is sickness, death, the passing of time.
Yeah, definitely.
Because there's so many people, so many characters on the show that are sick, so many actors that couldn't come back because they've passed away. Some of them a long time ago, some, David Bowie died right before this happened.
Before it, Catherine Coulson.
I'm dying.
I'm sorry, Margaret.
You know about death. That it's just a change, not an end.
Man, talk about fearless. Oof. Like her scenes in this, just they rip your heart out every time they cut to her.
They do, and it's really wonderful that she felt like she had the strength and the energy to do that, because it wouldn't have been the same show without her.
Yeah.
Even just the brief shots.
I mean, I think even people that aren't into Twin Peaks, they know the log lady. Like that's the most kind of, you can pinpoint the quirkiness of the show on, this character that gets messages from her log. Yeah. Like she's the heart of the whole thing.
When they were showing it on A&E back in the 90s.
Yeah.
Like she was the host and she cut little, intros for the whole seasons.
Yeah.
And the fact that she could be able to do that in the unfortunate, health that she was in was just a blessing.
It's a testament not just to like how much David Lynch loves this world and these characters, but the people he's collaborated with too.
Definitely. The only other Hayward in the show, apart from Gersten briefly, Dr. Hayward has moved out of town, which I assume was the only way they could do it. So they just set up,
literally Skype in his performance.
Yeah, it worked.
Because he died shortly after this too.
Yep, he was in pretty ill health.
Yeah. Harry Dean Stanton died shortly after this.
Miguel Ferrer he died pretty close to it.
Miguel Ferrer, yeah, it's crazy how many people, and I think And like I said, I think that's kind of one of the themes of this season is, yeah, just everybody's getting older, the passing of time. So it's great that he was able to get all these people together. And then to give major roles to people that he knows are dead.
Yeah.
Major Briggs is one of the key components of this season.
And he died forever ago.
He died a really long time ago.
Yeah, he's been dead for like 20 years. And he's key.
We can't get David Bowie back? Fuck it, he's a tea kettle now.
Fine. Michael J. Anderson's a weirdo and doesn't want to be in it. He's a tree.
He's a fucking tree.
That's great. Why wouldn't he be? He evolved. It's fine. Who are you to say that he's wrong, you know?
Yeah.
But having such a show that, yeah, you're able to take these leaps that you might not be able to do in another narrative.
Yeah.
And you're able to capitalize on them like this. And there's a lot of like telephonic communication in this in there. A lot of that reminds me of like kind of what would be considered kind of a retro thing, because there's obviously people are texting and text messages and that kind of thing are important, but there's a whole methodical thing where Evil Coop like busts out the old telephone that's in the suitcase and hooks it up and this and that and the other thing.
Yeah.
And that takes like 5 minutes, and you watch him do every little bit of it because we have time.
Then there's the whole technology angle to the show is interesting because there's multiple realities or multiple dreams or whatever you want to call them. I feel like in David Lynch's mind, it's all kind of the same thing as far as different worlds, different universes. Different...
Yeah, it's all electricity.
Yeah, you travel through electricity, but a dream, an alternate reality, it's all kind of the same thing. And I think that's one of the key ways of understanding that the world of Twin Peaks, not the town, but the world that most of the show takes place in is different than like our world is kind of shown with these technology things. Like, what you're talking about with Evil Cooper and his whole convoluted phone suitcase thing.
But that seems super important that it's landline telephonic.
Yeah, but then other stuff in the world too, like he has a tracking device, and it's just like 3 random shapes, and it looks so cheap. And then like Jane Addams, who we haven't mentioned, who plays the coroner in South Dakota, but like her whole computer system for.
Oh yeah, it looks like Windows 95.
Yeah,
maybe.
yeah. So it looks like our world, but there's these little things that make the technology just feel like completely different.
I do feel like that sort of like it's supposed to point you at certain things, like and again, it's like you turn the corner in the police office in Twin Peaks, and there's the modern stuff. It's been isolated.
Yeah,
it's put away. The sheriff's desk, wood, normal, and then the screen just.
He's got his little wood lever.
Yeah. So it's like, okay, so you found a way to integrate it into your, design.
Yeah.
But it's still, with the wooden lever, that still feels like old technology.
Just don't try and explain cell phones to Lucy. She doesn't get it.
No, she doesn't. Until she does.
Until she does.
She finally, eventually does, which is one of the brilliant things about Lucy. God, and that's one of the things about Lucy that I like carried through from the first 2 seasons to this one, is that you can never underestimate her. Because you got to remember, she's the one in season 2 that just was just discreetly typing up a conversation that was happening in front of her, and nobody, she wasn't supposed to know that, but she wasn't supposed to be listening, and nobody thinks of her because she's just the receptionist.
Yeah.
And when Chad gets the mail, fucking Chad, he's just like, oh, Lucy's not going to notice that.
Yeah.
Of course she does. And she's the key that locks, opens the whole fucking thing up. If she hadn't noticed that, he could have gotten, Richard could have gotten away with it, wouldn't have had to leave town, and wouldn't eventually meet up with Evil Coop and all that sort of thing. So she's very strongly key to the whole thing.
Sure.
And I like that she's, you have to remember, you have to, keep that in your mind. She's not just a ditzy, confused person that doesn't understand how someone can be on the phone and and has no idea which sheriff you want to see.
Sheriff Truman isn't here?
Well, do you know which one? It could make a difference.
No, ma'am.
One is sick and the other one is fishing. It could make a difference.
Another actor that you know, again, could have been, you know, if it, you know, is somebody that's worked with David Lynch a lot, but also could have been like another famous person. Was Naomi Watts, and she shows up as Janie E., Dougie's long-suffering wife. Man, she's been through some bullshit. You just can tell with her.
Okay, Dougie, you're acting weird as shit.
Whoever ends up marrying Dougie Jones in the first place, you got to wonder about, maybe, just from the little glimpses that were given of the, you know, Dougie before he shows up.
That is something I wish we got a little bit more of.
I would be interested in
I want to
that.
see maybe the new show that David Lynch is working on, maybe it'll be the Dougie Jones prequel. How about that?
I'll watch that.
But I think even in the context of this series, I think it would have been beneficial to see a little bit more of Dougie before
just a little bit
before Cooper replaces him.
You get a lot of that through Janie.
That's true. Just her general performance and the way she reacts to him. You can tell she's fed up with his shit.
It's really interesting to think about. He shows up basically catatonic, and she's not really that worried.
You were supposed to call them and set up a time to pay them off, and look, this shows up. Do you have an explanation for this?
Jade.
Jade. So that's her name, is it?
Jade give 2 rides.
There were critics at the time that were kind of talking about how the women characters were sort of like, portrayed as just shrieking evil, all screaming, and all the men are all the problem.
Yeah.
And I really don't think that holds true. It could certainly go that way if, the writing and the performances weren't as good. But Janie's a perfect example of that. Like, she's yelling at Dougie all the time because he will not get his shit together. But he won't get his shit together.
Yeah.
And clearly she's used to this. Clearly this is not something that's just brand new.
She's completely justified in how angry she is at Dougie all the time.
And she's so in control, so smart. And I think the key scene with her for me is when she goes to pay off the gambling debt.
What kind of world are we living in where people can behave like this, treat other people this way without any compassion or feeling for their suffering? Now, I suggest you take a good long look at yourselves because I never want to see either of you again.
And then the gangster's like, well, you're going to pay this much more. And it's just like, no, I'm not. Basically just no.
Yeah.
And she shuts it down so perfectly, and they just like, can't do anything about it. Because
we've never had anybody tell us off like this.
No, and she's so in charge.
Yeah.
And that's her character all the way through. Like, she's trying to keep this family together and raise her son properly, and she's a very strong character as far as I'm concerned.
Oh yeah, she's one of the highlights of the season.
Yeah, and Lucy as well. You're supposed to dismiss Lucy as a ditz that doesn't understand things, but she is the key to the whole thing.
Mm-hmm. Even the Sheriff Truman's wife.
Yeah.
The first few times we see her, she's kind of that like nagging wife character from like a sitcom or something.
Right.
I've been just waiting at the house in case Dad needed a ride somewhere. You're impossible!
But then a few episodes later, we get a scene where we explain that their son committed suicide, and that fucked her up. And it's like, oh, okay, this is why she's so micromanaging things like this, because she's had this gigantic loss and it's messed with her.
Exactly.
So it's like even things like that, where it's like you have your typical sitcom nagging wife character, but you get a little more backstory and you find out why they're like that.
Yeah.
He couldn't take being a soldier.
Also, Tammy, FBI agent Tammy.
She's there.
She's there. I get the kind of feeling that more on rewatches too. Like, you're supposed to be really focusing on how Gordon's not quite right. Gordon likes the young ladies a little too much.
That was funny. And rewatching it, I forgot about this from the first time, but it might be the last episode or the second to last, where he makes like this really crude comment.
I said you've gone soft in your old age.
Not where it counts, buddy.
I was like, shockingly crass for David Lynch.
Take it easy.
I mean, I know it's not David Lynch, it's Gordon Cole,
right.
But it was just, it caught me off guard.
Yeah, but I think that's more something I think about on more rewatches too. Like, there's that the French woman in his room.
Très chic.
That he makes poor Albert just sit there forever.
She takes her time getting out of there.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Everyone takes their time with everything in this show.
Oh, that's true. And he does not want to take his time. He's still Albert.
Yeah. I love that so much of the season is the two of them.
Yes.
And well, Tammy's there too, but mainly those two. Yeah. Like I would watch a whole show of them.
Yeah,
they're so funny together.
They are. They're just like a comedy team, like a good comedy team. Those two.
She's here visiting a friend of her mother, whose daughter has gone missing. The mother owns a turnip farm. I told her to tell the mother that her daughter will turn up eventually. She didn't get it either.
But Tammy's main function, I mean, because like we were talking about, like so much of the show is about characters getting old. And she's kind of like the new recruit. She's younger. She's kind of learning the ropes. She's works as like a way to get exposition across.
Yeah,
because sure. Albert and Gordon Cole, they've been through this all together. They know all this shit.
They've got too much shorthand.
You gotta have somebody to explain what the fuck is happening for our sake. So Tammy kind of works for that.
And honestly, I think Christabel, in her key scene, like where she kind of like she knows, and when you can tell is when Gordon's trying to comfort Diane outside the police station, and she just can't decide how to stand. Like nothing's comfortable, and that almost just feels like her telling us. She's just like, I know, I know what I am here. maybe that's putting too much into it, but it just kind of felt that way to me.
That's true. We should talk about Richard too. We should mention him.
We should talk about Richard.
Because man,
he's great.
In David Lynch's career of writing scumbag characters, this is one of the scummiest. There's a lot of he reminds me a lot of Dennis Hopper in Blue Velvet, just in terms of just like being a complete scumbag.
You recoil from him like the second he's on screen, and he's a weird looking dude.
Yeah.
Great looking, but like he's got
perfect for the part.
He's got that kind of like
what's that angular like? It just makes him look like evil.
Cocksucking bitch, and I'll cornhole that piece of shit.
How are you today?
Now give me some fucking money.
And that scene where he storms into his grandmother's house and Johnny's there, like
still taking care of Johnny.
Still taking care of Johnny, but he's like tied up to a chair because he was running like crazy earlier, and he had to calm him down. So we got this weird bear that I'm sure David Lynch made himself sitting right in front of him.
Hello, Johnny. How are you today? Hello, Johnny. How are you today?
That scene is like that's like classic David Lynch stuff.
Oh yeah.
That perfect balance of this is weird and funny, but also terrifying.
Completely terrifying because he's, Richard is so menacing.
He's so intimidating. Yeah. He beats up his grandma. Ugh. That's where we're at in this world.
Yeah. And poor Ben, because Ben's changed. Ben is he's basically not evil anymore. He just wants to run the lodge and just is exasperated by all the other people.
That's true, yeah.
There'd be a certain point where you'd think like, well, that character could have like, collaborated with him, and there would have been like a new generation of horror and evil. It's like, no, he's taken it all. Because he's that much of a bad guy.
Yeah, he's
cleared it all out. Which is, oh man, and just the idea of who he is. That Evil Coop raped Audrey in the hospital while she was in a coma, and that's why that fucker exists.
Yeah.
It's just, ugh.
It's like, I mean, that's an overall theme of the season too, is this kind of birth of evil.
Yeah, yes.
With him specifically, but then, in a much larger scale, which I don't even know how we're going to start talking about this shit.
I don't know, man.
Is that where we're at?
Are we there? No, let's not go there yet.
Okay.
We might have to take a break before we get into that one. See, I've got this, bottle of bourbon there.
Oh, that's where we're at.
In case you want it.
Why you have to make something so simple so fucking difficult? Cunt.
And talking about performances, we did just kind of skip over Kyle fucking MacLachlan.
Yes, if you get nothing else out of this season, what a phenomenal performances, not just performance.
Basically four.
Yeah.
Four performances, which is amazing. And they're all completely different, but they're all the same.
Yeah.
It's an actor's highest achievement you can even think of doing something like that. He's so good.
Yeah. And that feels like you could only get to that place if you have the history that David Lynch and him have, working together for so many years. And same with Laura Dern, which we can talk about her too. But but yeah, Kyle MacLachlan is just. I mean, this is. Some people hate Dougie, but for me, this is the Dougie Jones show.
It is.
I think that's the highlight of the season.
Oh my God!
It really wins you over, or won me over in a way that I wasn't expecting.
It was so. It's so funny and fun and sweet, which you don't know that's going to happen from the beginning of his story.
Yeah.
He's cheating on his wife in some empty house somewhere. Whoever this Dougie guy is, but it turns out to be just a real central thing in the whole series. Not just that you obviously every episode you're waiting for the group to come back to full, and you get that frustration of I love the way that Mike back in the Black Lodge is still just don't die.
How would have you must die?
Well, and there's a good kind of self-referential moment with Mike when Cooper finally comes out of his comatose Dougie state.
You are awake.
100%.
Finally.
Another good audience surrogate moment.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, Dougie Jones, I mean, Kyle MacLachlan's performance, it's like he has lines of dialogue, but it feels like something right out of a silent movie, like a Harold Lloyd or Buster Keaton or something.
Yeah, back to Eraserhead. It's kind of that stumbling,
he's
bubbling,
kind of that's true. The way he walks around,
Charlie Chaplin kind of thing. Yeah,
when we talked about Eraserhead, I talked about how inexplicably funny it is just seeing him standing in that elevator, waiting for the elevator doors to close, and
that's Dougie, man.
There's moments like that in this. Yeah. If I were to, in rewatching it, there's one shot that I think encapsulates the entirety of this show, this season.
Okay. All right, buddy.
Come on, Dougie,
Everybody's facing to exit the elevator. Dougie's got his back to the camera. And they're like, Dougie, come on, get the fuck out of the way. And it's like everyone in that elevator, those are other TV shows. And then Dougie Jones is Twin Peaks.
Yeah. Yep.
It perfectly encapsulates everything.
Yeah. Oh, man. We cracked up so hard with him in the casino. Initially, we're introduced to what Cooper is in Dougie's body, which is he's, basically catatonic. He'll move around if he'll stand up and go around if you push him.
Yeah.
But otherwise, he doesn't know what he's doing at all.
He needs to be directed everywhere.
Yeah. He's like a baby in a full-size body that knows has balance.
Yeah.
Basically. And a guy with money in the casino, what's he want? Everybody thinks he's there to gamble it because that's what casinos are for.
Yeah.
Makes perfect sense. So the security guard stops him, pushes him over to Meg Foster.
Yeah, Meg Foster shows up for 5 seconds.
Why not? And she gives him the change, and then Mr. Jackpots is born.
Yeah, Mr. Jackpots.
I love that so much.
Mr. Jackpots! Mr. Jackpots!
Mr. Jackpots.
It's almost like Forrest Gump. I think of Forrest Gump, everybody loves that movie, but when I watch that, it's like he just does whatever anybody tells him to. This almost feels like a play on that, where it's like you got to direct him where to go, and the White Lodge is leading him on his journey slowly, every step of the way.
Yeah, that old lady.
Thank you, Mr. Jackpot. Thank you, Mr. Jackpot.
But she represents what kind of becomes a thing with Dougie too. Is so I can understand people's patience being kind of worn by Dougie, but he ends up being just such a positive force.
Everything he
touches, he makes better. Mm-hmm. Which that's Cooper too. Cooper was always this positive force, and that's what this world has been missing.
Yeah,
which is why everything's kind of turned to shit.
It's amazing that part of him is what can come through even that sort of handicap.
Even when he's comatose.
Yeah, yeah.
But he changes that old lady's life. He turns around Dougie, and it is important to point out that. We call him Dougie Jones. It is Cooper. When you complain about Cooper not being here, he's in the whole show.
Oh, he's there.
He's just not,
He's not there.
Yeah. The real Dougie Jones, he gets obliterated in the Red Room. But that's what happens to the real Dougie Jones.
He's gone.
Even when we call him Dougie Jones, it is Cooper. Mm-hmm. He's there for the whole thing.
But yeah, and so he fixes that old lady's life. He turns the bad guy at the office into a contrite good guy just by not drinking coffee.
Yeah.
That bad, huh?
He turns gangsters into good guys.
The Mitchum brothers.
Giving them pies. He makes Jim Belushi into someone I like to watch.
Jim Belushi's best performance since Jingle All the Way.
So good. I love those guys.
Yeah.
I love this guy! Dougie?
Dougie Jones.
And then the payoff to all that ends up being surprisingly emotional and sweet when Cooper's finally back, and he genuinely means it when he says, like, the time I've spent with you has meant a lot to me.
But I want to tell you how much I've enjoyed spending time with both of you. You've made my heart so full.
You really feel for that kid. Like, it's amazing what started out as this goofy comedy shtick where he's wearing like his tie on his head and spitting out coffee. that it could go from there all the way to, I mean, when we get we create another Tulpa that becomes Dougie because Cooper, being the good guy that he is, doesn't want this family to lose their father, so he just creates another one for them.
A better Dougie.
A better Dougie. And that shot when they open the door and they all embrace, it's like one of the sweetest things that David Lynch has ever shown.
It ends up completely sweet and heartwarming. This is great. And yeah, so you've got that through line through the entire thing, and you can follow that because that's your good and evil still starting to meet. Because we haven't talked much about Evil Coop yet.
Oh yeah.
Which is, again, just in terms of performance, man.
So intimidating.
Yeah.
With doing very little.
Very little.
Very little like external work. I mean, you can tell that there's a lot of evil behind those eyes. But
but
he's
it's so subtle,
stoic,
and quiet.
Yeah. Well, he's in control. He knows no one can touch him. There's that part early on. I think it's the first scene with him when he goes into that house and
so good. But yeah, the key line with him with that control thing is him saying at certain times, or like, doesn't want. I'm trying. I don't need the coordinates. I want them.
And I'll follow up on that contact of mine. Hopefully, get the information you need.
Want, not need. I don't need anything, Ray.
And that's Evil Coop in a nutshell. It's just like he doesn't need shit. He's got it. He's going to get what he's going to get.
Yeah.
And I think his whole plan, as far as I can tell, is that he doesn't want to go back to the Black Lodge. He wants to continue wreaking havoc on Earth.
He just wants to be evil.
Yeah. He's got to figure out how to do that.
Yeah.
And he spends a lot of time laying the groundwork. He sets up Dougie. He sets up, a whole criminal network.
But we know how tough he is because he arm wrestles Jason Voorhees at one point.
That's right.
And he kicks his ass.
It hurt my arm when you moved it down here.
Yeah, but just that in that even tone, he never gets angry.
Yeah.
There's no wasted energy. He's like just like a character that just moves, cuts through everything.